Hello, how you doing? You're watching Rejoice with Pastor Chuk. Thank you for watching the show. You could be watching any show in the world, but you chose to watch us. I'm hanging out today at one of my favorite spots, Ember Mill restaurant here in the beautiful city of Santa Barbara. I had a big lunch, kind of stuffed. Always something great happening here. Brother Harold always takes good care of us. But as I stumbled into this restaurant a few months back, shooting the breeze with Brother Harold, one of the lovely chefs, the chef, master chef, I stumbled in to set up this interview here and asked if I could shoot in this lovely establishment. And I bumped into a young lady who I had to slap myself on the hand because my nose was kind of up in the air that day. And when I met her, my nose was a little higher than it should be. And she introduced herself, very polite lady, very welcoming young lady. She said, Brother Harold's in the back. I think she said, Brother Harold's gone. We'll be back in a little while. But my nose was up in the air, and I had to come back, and I got a chance to meet her, and I assumed that she was just, a very small word, that she was just someone who's bussing tables. And then once I got to know her, I realized that she's a woman of power, woman of intellect, an author, a woman of style and class. And I've been struggling with dental work lately, and it's hard for me to pronounce names sometimes, but I'm gonna see if I can get it right this time. Vilna, Bashi, Treitler.
You did.
So,
you did.
How are you doing? This is the new shake we're doing these days. We have to do distance shake. How are you doing? First of all, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And thank you for allowing me to be humble enough to apologize and say, forgive me for my nose being.
There's nothing to forgive.
So you're
it's
so
okay,
sweet.
but I'm very glad you've taken it as a moment to, I don't know, see the humanity in everyone. So that's good. But yeah, I'm just a person just like anyone else. So, but I'm glad to be here.
When you say just a person, because once again here we are using the word just. There are many layers to you.
Okay.
Many layers to you. You're not just a young lady who works at the restaurant.
No.
You do
In fact,
much more than that.
I do work at the restaurant, but I don't work at the restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Share what is your connection with the restaurant and Brother?
Well,
Brother Harold?
I actually live nearby, and my husband and I were walking. We're foodies. We were walking down the street, and we looked at the menu on the stand outside. And my family is from the Caribbean, and we were like, wait a second. What? We knew that this place had another owner and was Italian and had closed and now was reopening as something new, and we decided to try the food. And of course, the chef's a foodie, and we bonded over food. And then the pandemic hit, and he had to close, and I was like, I can't lose this place now that I just found it. Yeah. So I don't remember the occasion, but I came one morning to help. I guess I was going to help set up the tables outside because the governor had closed everything down, but then reopened rather quickly, deciding, okay, this Saturday places can open. And so I said, let me help Harold put some chairs outside so that, because they were just thinking about how we're going to close the street. Yeah. And then I realized no one was coming to help him. And I was like, how are you going to do this by yourself? And he says, well, I was going to stand by the window and take an order and run to the kitchen. And I'm like, you can't run an entire restaurant alone. Yeah. No one's coming. So then I said, all right, let me stick around. And we jive, and we, so I've been kind of helping out when I can, because I actually have a job. I have another job, but I feel like it is we're so fortunate to have such good food, and it's a black man from the Caribbean is on State Street, one of the most affluent and not very diverse cities in the country. And so if I can help him succeed, why wouldn't I?
And I think that's one thing that I appreciate and I love about you as well, is your humility.
Oh.
That's an act of humility.
Okay.
I believe it is.
Maybe.
Just saying, first helping someone in need and helping someone who didn't ask for it, and doing a task who sometimes could be looked down upon, like I did.
Oh, yeah, well.
And that is the humility of it.
Yeah.
And so this lovely lady in front of us, she's so humble. But you said this is not your job.
No.
What is your job?
I'm a professor at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I'm in the Department of Black Studies, and I'm a sociologist and a visual artist.
And very humble and a part-time
And
volunteer
volunteer at a restaurant.
See? And that's an amazing side of it, and I think that's what community is all about.
Yes, that's right.
That is community. You're teaching at the highest level and serving at the highest level.
Oh, well, like I said, I mean, what else can I do? I'm here, and someone needs my help, and I try to do what I can.
We need more people like that.
Well,
would you agree?
I would agree. I hope there are a lot of us out there. I think there are. I think it's just I'll try to be diplomatic. For the last few years, the people who have had the microphone and talked the loudest are not the kindest people.
Yes.
But maybe we're getting that microphone back. I'm trying to be optimistic about that.
Yeah. And this is part of getting that microphone back too.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be a TV personality, being able to voice my and share my love of food and people and friends and Brother Harold. I love this guy. I coached his kid in swimming years ago, and that's our relation. That's how I met Harold. And so that's how we met. You're a professor. You're teaching students. You're empowering the next generation.
Some of them, the ones who like to study.
I was the world's worst student until I went back to school as a 55-year-old adult.
Oh, really?
Then I was the valedictorian. But as a young person, I wasn't driven. And then as I became a mature adult and realized the error of my ways, and then I breezed through it. There's a young person watching the TV right now.
Okay.
They're watching the TV right now, and they're thinking about, maybe I want to get involved in teaching. Maybe I want to do something else in my life. What would you say to them to get them involved in teaching?
Well, first I have to say that teaching is one of the most time-consuming parts of an academic profession, but it's not always the most important in the sense that when you're evaluated for promotion, and that's not always the top thing that they use to evaluate you. So professors profess, and what they have to profess is what they learn. So they're constantly learning and doing research. And so University of California, Santa Barbara is what's called a Research One University, and it means that research is the product of the university. So I do teach, but as a researcher, that's really, quote unquote, the most important in the terms of the way I'm evaluated.
I see.
So, and then teaching comes next, and then what's called service and professional activity comes third. So You go to conferences, you work on editorial boards of journals, you review journals, you serve on committees. That there's a lot of work.
Wow.
There's a much more to it than teaching,
Gotcha.
and most people don't know that.
I didn't.
So yeah. So the thing I would say to someone who wants to do this kind of work is you really have to be inquisitive. Teaching is really the best way to learn. You are constantly in a state of learning. Research puts you constantly in a state of learning. So I would say it's not for people who don't like to read books. Yeah, and the things that we read often are articles that are published in academic journals. Journals are places where professors talk to each other in writing. So we have to write very high level research that communicates in a conversation that's had in journals. And so that's part of the evaluation process. What journals did you publish in? What does your research contribute to that conversation? And it's a very involved and complex set of processes that is meant to decide how well you do at participating in those kinds of conversations.
You talked about reading and loving to read. You also love to write as well. You're an author. You've been published. Share with me that side of you too, because the layers are getting thicker now.
Yes, and I have to be a little nuanced here and say, no, I do not love writing.
Okay.
I write. I love having written. So if I look at my books and articles, I'm glad they are there.
Yeah.
But the writing is so difficult. It's a very challenging.
Wow.
This is a very hard way to make a living. So it's just you and a computer and silence. And you're turning that silence and the thoughts in your head and the knowledge you've acquired into text that is supposed to communicate something to somebody else.
Wow.
That is a very frightening thing.
To get the right message out. Yes.
Or to get the message out. So I try to, one of the things I teach my graduate students who are themselves working to join the academy, writing is mainly editing. You write down that sentence and then you go, that's not exactly right. I really wanted to say this other thing. And then you correct that. And then you say, well, in order for somebody to understand that sentence, I have to really explain this other thing, so it needs a whole paragraph before it. And then, well, what I really need to do is say how we got to this place. So I actually need a chapter with the history of, and so that's what writing is. It's not, people get stumped by thinking I just have to sit down and get it out. No, it's a process of putting things together like Lego blocks. Yeah. You're going to build something, but you need all the right pieces in the right place to make the argument hold. Yeah. And so it's really, really, really difficult.
Wow.
And so I'm fortunate. I have written a few books, but I don't love it. It's amazing. Hard work.
Wow, that's amazing. You were as you were sharing that story. I'm a Methodist preacher by trade.
Okay.
And I remember sometimes sitting there trying to. You read the story, and the story comes in a black and white text. Sometimes there's some red sprinkled in there, but basically a black and white text. And you've got to relate that text to an audience who sometimes may or may not read that. And so you've got to articulate that to my audience. And I remember sharing with one of our students saying that the book comes in black and white. We have to articulate it in color and in depth for the people to understand the painting or the and I think that's what I understand you're doing in your writing is to giving the article color and depth. And that's what I got when I met you, that I thought it was just one thing, and once I understood the color and the depth and so I'm still learning more and more about you. I always share that every show we do is a part one of a 13-part series, and I think we're looking at a 26-part series. if I'm just thinking about this one, I'm just, this is how it goes, and so I'm just so honored. What is new? What is next?
Oh, all right. Well, right now I'm almost done writing a memoir.
Wow.
So the book is an explanation. No, that's not the right word. It's the story of my engagement with education.
Wow.
Public school and higher education, and becoming a professor, and getting tenure, and becoming a full professor, and my next step is likely to be endowed chair. Wow. So I've been all the way through, and I feel like I have a lot to explain, discuss, work out, and so I wanted to write this. So that's part of why I think it's the right time, because I've been through all the levels of education you could go through. But I also want to send some messages. So I feel like the first is to young people who are struggling, who are like me, the child of immigrants, first in the family to go to college. I'm Black and I'm a woman, and there's a lot of ways that I am in underrepresented groups. Yeah. And I feel that I have been through the school of hard knocks.
It's a good it's great education.
And it's really easy to, let me put it this way. Once you get knocked down, you can get very discouraged. And I want my story to encourage people to try to stand up again when they get knocked down. Wow. That's one of my goals. Wow. And then the other thing is, like you're saying, a lot of people don't really know what professors do. And graduate students have the hardest time translating that so their families and friends could understand why, no, I can't go out this weekend, I have to study. It's like, you study all the damn time. Yes. So I'm hoping that somebody could say, you know what, read this book, and then you'll understand why this is so hard, because there's no explanation out there for how challenging this work is and why it's so all-consuming. And then the third audience that I imagine is college administrators who talk about diversity, but may not clearly understand how hard it is for us in underrepresented groups to make it. And so diversity has to be more than, let's get some color in this room, or let's get some women in this room. It has to be understood as, there are people trying to claw their way into the room. How do we set up some scaffolding to help people arrive? And I think that's the conversation that we need to have. It's not simply like, why does this room look so white? Why does this room look so male? It's like, how do we get that change to happen? And that has to be more than a conversation about the room. It has to be about pathways to the room.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Every time you open your mouth, I fall deeper and deeper in
okay.
Thank you. You are you're a married woman, happily married. How long?
This next month is
get it right, girl.
16 years.
16.
I think.
Yeah. Anytime we find somebody that put up with us girl, it's a miracle, isn't it?
I always make a joke. Sometimes my friends call me and they say, "Oh, how are you today?" And I said, "Well, I'm still heterosexual." And I'm married. That's how I'm doing.
That's great.
I live with a man.
My answer
And it's hard.
has been for the last, well, so first, I have to ask myself, well, tell myself, my wife is either crazy and in love or in love and crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Either one works.
Yes.
But I also know this, that, and I share, when people say, how is she doing? I always say, every morning she gets prettier.
Oh,
Every
that's
morning.
sweet.
Every morning. And I think that's what keeps us going. And I'm not the best guy to get along with. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, can you imagine marrying me? And that's a tough thing when you look at yourself and say, could I marry me? And so that's honoring your husband 16 years and him honoring you 16 years. Hats off.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
we've been 40 years, and it's just to make that thing work. It's a testimony to commitment.
Yeah, well, we use a lot of humor in
You have
our
to.
house.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he tells me I'm pretty in the middle of an argument.
Smart man. Smart man.
I'm like, are you even listening to me?
I do that
He's
too.
like,
Beautiful,
but
right
you're
there.
so pretty. And it's like, okay, never mind. And it always diffuses the argument.
I do this. I say, honey, could you go make me a tuna fish sandwich with your fine self?
No.
See?
That doesn't.
And so you have to, you know, and I think those things are personal relationship builders to keep it light, keep it fresh, keep it growing.
Yeah.
It's so easy not to work on a marriage.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah, to
I'm
not
on
work
my
on it.
third.
Right. So it's a thing that you have to work on.
Yes.
You have to put the effort into it. And so we're just so grateful that you came. You put the effort into being on our show. You're putting the effort into this establishment. I'm going to put the effort into sending you a calendar with those 26 dates.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay.
Because we want to follow up with you. We want to see what your next endeavor, what your next writing is, what
Okay.
so we want to maybe interview some of those students who you pushed into greatness and see. Are there any? So with this type of extensive career, do you have any students that have gone on to super greatness? Any? Are you a name dropper?
I am not a name dropper.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do have students who are, doing all kinds of things. Some are professors, some are analysts,
Wow.
some are teachers. They've done all kinds of things. Some are activists. Yeah.
Let me see if I can back up. What made you get into the field of study that you're in?
Oh, that's a funny story.
Yeah. I wanted to back.
That's a really funny story. So, I worked for the city of New York as an analyst a research analyst for the New York City Department of Employment, and I had a boss, and her boss were two Latinas with PhDs. And they ran things there. And I said, wow, I guess, I should back up. But I said, oh, if you run things with a PhD, I need one of those. I had also participated in, in the 80s, students were fighting the fight against investments. Colleges and universities would invest their pension funds in the South African apartheid regime, and we organized to get them to divest. So students were already working on this before I got to Columbia University, but at the time I arrived, the fight had been so prolonged, the trustees had agreed to divest and then they did not do it. And so I was in the leadership of this organization that organized this protest that turned into the anti-apartheid movement in the U.S.
Wow.
So, why did I mention that? I've forgotten your question
Because
now.
what got you involved in that field of study?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
So I said, at the end of the protest, which was successful, we took over a building, and it was very successful, and, we got world famous, weirdly, and other universities followed suit. We ended up dismantling the protest when we felt like we had done enough and that we had gotten enough attention. But we still continued until they divested. So we had a graduation ceremony. I graduated. We walked off when the president started to speak. The whole thing was over. And then I said to one of the professors who was supporting our movement, well, now the protest is over and I've graduated. What do I do now? And he says, you should get a PhD. And I told you I was first in my family to go to college. I'm like, what? Me? Like, I just could not. No one's ever said anything like that to me. But that put the bug in my ear. Then I got this job, and I saw PhDs getting listened to. And then I said, okay, I need one of those. And I was thinking I'd get my PhD and come back. I'm from New York. I'll work in the city, get my pension. And I messed up. And I did a really good dissertation. But before that, so one of the things I wanted to do, since I said people listen apparently to PhDs, which isn't true, I also figured people always listen to economists. So I was getting a PhD in economics. And then I realized that this is not for me. They make a lot of assumptions about how the world works. My experience was that the world does not work the way economists think it does, and I don't really think they're that concerned about that. If their formula says what they think it should say, then that's fine. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. But in that program I was in, we had to do a minor, and so I started taking a class in sociology, and I was like, oh my God, this is what you all talk about? Like how to change the world, what system of social organization works best, that gender, race, and class are important. These are my people. So I quit economics and changed to sociology. And I was, again, accidentally then in the top sociology program in the country, and accidentally did a dissertation that was good enough to get me a job as a professor. So I did not go back to New York. I ended up in Chicago teaching at Northwestern University.
See?
Yeah, so.
Oh, goodness. So all three names have meanings.
Yes.
Your names. Tell me the meaning of your names.
Okay. My first name is Vilna, and that's my mother's name. So I'm Vilna Jr.
Spelled Vilna.
V as in Victor, I-L, N as in Nancy, A, Vilna. And as far as I know, there are only three of us. It's me and my mom, and somewhere out there is a lawyer who went to Harvard Law School.
Murphy.
Because I remember in my 20s and 30s, I would introduce myself and they would say, did you go to Harvard Law School?
Wow.
And so
the name.
hi, Vilna, the lawyer. There is someone out there, but those are the only three people I know who have this name.
Wow.
And my mother has always been called by a nickname. Her middle name is Jonetta, and she goes by Joan. So when I was born, Vilna was named after, I was named after her. My middle name is Francine, and that's my father's name is Frank.
Okay.
And then when I'm trying to tell you a short version of this story. So when I was married the first time, I realized that I did not want to take my husband's name. And then I realized, well, why am I keeping my father's name? I didn't want that one either.
Wow.
So I had decided to talk to my grandmother, who was, she's in her 80s at the time, I guess. And she and I said, Grandma, do you know any of the stories of our family that go back to slavery?
Yes.
Because I was trying to resurrect a slave name.
Yes. Yeah.
And she said she did. And so I did my PhD at the University of Wisconsin. There they have a department of African languages and literature. So I took those names and went to the department and I said, I need some help researching some history.
Wow.
And they said, oh, you're never going to find these names. Because first of all, one of the names was Hard Times, and that was actually a very common slave name. And the other one was Vashti. And so they like, you're never going to find them, but they gave me a list of the top 7 African languages that were spoken by those slaves who were shipped from West Africa. And they said, we have dictionaries of all of these languages in the library, you could go look. So I said, okay, I will. And I looked for every, like, how you might spell Vashti. I looked for every combination. But in the Hausa dictionary, the word Bashi was there. And it means the fruit that dropped from the tree or the branch that broke from the tree. And since I created my own family tree, that's my name. I found it that way. And I legally changed it in my 20s to Bashi. And then my third husband is Mr. Treitler. When I met him, I was advanced in age, and I said to him, you know, you're a great guy, but I have to have kids now. And he said, yeah, fine, let's do it, but all my kids are Treitlers. So I was like, oh, all right, that's a compromise I can deal with. But then I just slipped the Bashi in there, so my kids are Bashi Treitler as well. And then I took his name after we had kids.
Well, Professor, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry.
You have a very interesting story, and that's the beauty of this show. It is a faith journey, and we want to thank you for allowing us to ride on your faith journey.
Okay.
Thank you. We're looking forward to you coming on many
Another
more times.
time.
Thank you
Another
for watching
27
the show.
times.
We're looking forward to many, many more shows. Thank you for watching Rejoice. You could be watching any show in the world, but you chose to watch us, and we're so very, very grateful. Thank you.